What's up? Welcome to the American Gods show, and we're talking about episode 5, Sister Rising. I feel like that's a power, like 5.
Power jazz hands.
Yes, power jazz hands. Bam. Yes. What's up? So my name is Kari Lane, joined by my awesome co-host. This way, there we go, Flobo.
Hey, what's up? Is that right? I never get this right. I totally ruined it. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, no, it's like a weird backwards things for us. If anybody's like, "What are you doing?" All right, so then
I know last time I said that last episode was a halfway point. I think this one's a halfway point.
No, we're about yes. Get your numbers right. Gosh,
I'm sorry, man.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Well, then, speaking of the halfway point, how do you feel about this episode?
Ooh, okay. So a lot of good things to bring home with this one. I love the period piece this week. I'm not saying I don't usually dislike it, but there's something very gangs in New York about it, even though it was in Chicago, which I kind of like that turn of the century. And everyone knows who's watched our shows here and our other previous network that the Columbia episode is my favorite, that time period. So I got to see a little bit more of that. That was pretty cool. We got to see Bilquis become unhinged or unleashed, and even Shadow got some gravitas. And I know we'll talk about it later, but one of my favorite moments of the entire season is when Shadow was hanging with Cordelia outside. So a lot of good things for me. Definitely was a holding pattern episode storyline wise, but so many character beats and moments, I was satisfied.
Yes. Yeah. Speaking of that opening, if any of you watching, listening, familiar with, I do highly recommend Devil in the White City. It's a really cool historical fiction because there's a lot of elements in it that are real, but it's fudged a bit, but it's Chicago World's Fair and pretty much America's first serial killer. So when I saw that this was essentially the Chicago World's Fair, kind of, but it was the World's Columbian Exposition, which I'm like, sure, yes, okay. 1893, but it just gave me that vibe that I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Like, what a great, I agree. It's an interesting time period, especially like, even if people maybe had their whatever biases they had, this was kind of an event where you could bring all kinds of people and cultures and ideas together and show them off. Like, this is what we can do. And I love that this is essentially the birth of Technical Boy. I was like, that makes sense. It's the beginning of like hardcore technology to the extent that we know it today. Like you could say light bulbs technology, but that's not. Technical Boy is a bit more like gadgets and things.
Yeah. The mechanical thing, the hard machine versus the soft machine, and it was kind of. I don't want to say I felt sorry for
just a little bit. I felt a little bad for him of like, oh, but that what? This gives a bit more context of why he really hates people screwing him over. He really has a history of people taking advantage of him and throwing him under the bus.
Right, but that's the question. Like that opening sequence, I loved it. But when the credits started rolling with all the stuff, I'm like, am I supposed to feel sorry for this guy now? So I don't know, because I mean he did try to lynch Shadow last season. I can't forget that. But
it's more you feel sorry for the early version of him.
Right.
How's that like?
It's like a retcon almost, right?
Yeah.
Because I think we've all been in a situation where we got the magic beans, right? We got like taken for a ride, and you kind of feel like, oh man, how could it be so dumb? How could it be so stupid? And like how it got bookended this week, he was cowering in the corner, understanding what's going on with him. So.
Yeah, it was definitely a different side of him that we haven't seen before, and I love the essentially fake it till you make it with Maximilian, which also feels correct for technology too, of social media. Though I'm like, I miss the character of new media because I'm like, that's still a big part of everything. What?
Just hanging out? I don't know. Is that still on the board? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, wait a minute. And then we, as you mentioned, yes, we have Bilquis. I love where her character has gone now, and I love that she essentially rescues herself. I was really curious of like how this would play out. And as you said, it's like we get to essentially see her unleashed, which is great because it's like she had been held down in a way. But what did you think of that later? She's talking with Shadow, and then it's the I believed what others believed me to be, and to tear down the veil. Woo! Isn't that a good message for life?
Yeah, these things were kind of the highlights of last season. Not to get too deep about this, but to me it's very emphatic why we say this show is American Gods based on the book American Gods. Like our history is complex, and it does make a lot when it comes to different about race, sexual orientation, expression, gender, and I do think Bilquis embodies all of that because sexuality in itself does not have a gender, even though Bilquis is a divine feminine in this case. But to see that through her own struggles, she had an idea of who she was, but she was detached from her ancestry. She was hypersexualized for a long time. She was destitute. She found herself through sexual power, and now she's going back full circle, saying, "No, but you came from this kind of lineage." And so, I think her story was great. And that scene when she's like, "Are you come to rescue me, Shadow Moon?" I'm like, "Oh snap! You've been dismissed, Shadow."
It was
pretty
cute
awesome.
though, of like, yeah, and I was really happy. But he handled it great. He's like, no, but I got the car.
Yeah,
Like, it's okay. You did it.
I helped.
Yeah. It's the emptiness added to my own. So I liked her thing with the Oshun, Aye, I'm sorry if I say this wrong, Yamoja and Mensa, and bringing her back to you are a giver of life and the power of we, and just the healing and strength of water. I loved all of that symbolism. And it was great too of, it makes sense that if like the gods we've learned in this show, this world, are very much shaped by their believers. So maybe because at first when it's like she's a creator, I'm like, I hadn't thought of her that way as much because we've only seen it essentially of her taking a life,
Sure.
vague there ish.
Yeah.
But it's like, but that makes sense that like she probably had more to her. But as the different people over time worshipped her, that shifted clearly. So I was glad for her to get back in touch with the other goddesses and who she really is. And so I was like, oh, yes.
Yeah.
And that she's not alone.
Not alone is definitely one of more like recurrent themes here, right? Mm-hmm. The whole thing Wednesday is doing, trying to find a band of misfits to fight this war. And so I'm with you. I really felt like now seeing what happened this episode, even this season, we knew that we only got a slice of what Bilquis was and what she can do in the first 2 seasons.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. It was kind of like, I was curious on her god power of, well, what can she do? Because we hadn't really seen her do anything so much outside of herself besides what she does to Technical Boy. So it's like, well, what does she do? And this is like, no, she has a lot there that just been locked away. So I was like, yes.
Jazz Queen.
Exactly. And it is totally like, yes. Yeah, the water door moment and just visual effects, I wrote, wow, because that was just so... Chef
I put Bilquis
cool.
a waterbender. Is that?
Hey, yeah, she's like totally a waterbender.
I was like, sick. I know.
But yes, I loved that one is, and then just symbolically of the show too, and what it's saying of one, she is able to rescue herself. She's not some damsel in distress, and it is via the support of other women. So that was great too. And that is no disrespect to Shadow, because then he is helpful too. Because that's the other thing. Some stories, they make it where the man is purely just an accessory, like, okay, like the hardcore opposite is like, fine, he doesn't do anything. It's like, no, she did the thing on her own, but then he's there, and then they get to have their time together. I love the dinner scene too, like them at the bar felt so like normal.
Yeah, after work.
Yeah,
I put like this light sensory chamber for 3 days. That's cool. Let's get some wine.
Fries too. Fries are the meaning of life. Yes, I love that.
They're eternal.
But it's also the question too that she brings to him. What do you think of? She asked, "What was your motive to rescue me?" And tying it to his mom and Laura. What did you think of that?
So it's very interesting with Shadow because there's this whole thing about Shadow and Wednesday, the father-son dynamic. But Shadow's life has been shaped by the women in his life. Wednesday tends to be like this external stimulus that kind of challenges him and brings him out on different sides. But his base has been ruled, or maybe not ruled, but I would say are shaped by the women in his life. So it was kind of cool that Bilquis is like the third person in that trifecta between the woman that he actually gave his heart to in his marriage, even though that didn't work out, and his mom, even though she's not on this plane. So it was a nice little touch. Again, I'm not sure what that means, or I think there's going to be more to that, but I thought it was kind of a cool trifecta there.
Yeah, exactly. It was really, I liked him coming to the awareness as well of like, well, what is your motive to help her? and I feel he has a connection to her. But also, that was the thing that, remember, we talked about a little bit. If people remember the episode where he's his vision in the grocery store, and he's connected to the other African gods. And I'm like,
Yes.
I'm curious to explore that as well, because even though he is the child of a Norse mythology kind of lineage, there is part of his literal ancestry connected to this whole other place. And it's like, maybe there's that connection as well.
Yeah, the thing about Shadow is that there's a lot of things that you can pull from, whether or not it's like, as a first generation American, there's a thing I worry about or I think about, or I have like I'm my protectors of my own parents' heritage and lineage. But I was born here, and so I'm as American as apple pie and baseball, right? So like it's one thing where you will have elements of both, and I think Shadow does have that. But then maybe it's a combination of both, and maybe because it's a combination of both, it's actually neither. Like there's so much layers there that this story, if I was in the writer's room, you can take it in so many different directions. And I really hope that Shadow, when he gets to realize his full extent of his powers, ends up being something unique, but you can't deny both sides of his coin.
Absolutely. And I think I like that Bilquist kind of points out, like, have you used your powers yet? And he's like, yeah, I'm getting there. I'm like, come on, Shadow, let's do a little bit more though. But I like that get pushed by him to do that a little bit. Speaking of his woman, his lady love, we get Laura with Ibis and Salim, and how it was actually kind of romantic and reconfirmed our thoughts that Laura really does love our leprechaun, and he loved her because it's the blood of love, the love in his blood that brought her back to life. And I really like them all going, how are you alive?
Yeah, by the way, aren't you supposed to be like a zombie? But I like the fact that on Valentine's Day, she's like, nah, it was voodoo stuff. Like, she didn't want to admit at all. Like, no, I don't. Sweeney, I would never just sacrifice myself for a loser. That's what I did.
Yeah, but I love that she has all the flashbacks to that beautiful music when she thinks about him. I'm like, girl, you love him. Just admit it.
Just say,
okay. Yeah. And then it has the when they're trying to figure out everything, and I do like that Ibis is just like, Salim, can you go away? And then this provides that opportunity.
Well, okay. I understand Salim has had a rough time, but trying to sell products in a very desolate mortuary in Cairo is just a weird thing. And so when Ibis threw the keys, I was like, I'm with you. Send him far away.
And just like Laura said, it's like you need to do something. It doesn't matter what. Like when you're getting over grief, or if you're going through grief and getting over someone or not, just do something. So doing this road trip, I think, is good. Which I love. Speaking of another love word for Valentine's Day, essentially, I love their religion chat. I thought it was super interesting, and the faith of her asking him, and him kind of going, well, why does the atheist care? And his own questioning of who to pray to and what to pray. What did you think of all that road trip conversation? Which feels appropriate for like a road trip of like, we got a long time to talk. Let's go deep.
Right. I mean, this show here tends to be very flippant with a lot of things. Not in a bad way. It's just kind of the way it's presented. No God is seen as supreme. Even in season 1 when we saw Jesus, it was like, oh yeah, whatever. So, but we star. Like it was just totally to a side. And so when you actually had a religious conversation with someone who presumably, or in this world, had went to purgatory and back, it was cool to see. And maybe Salim isn't my favorite character, not for any bad reason. It's just I don't think of him as much. But I think it was cool to have a relative outsider push Laura there, because had it been Shadow, had it been Wednesday, had it been even Ibis, she probably would have put up defenses and go, but Salim always seems so doe-eyed and innocent.
He does. Bless his heart. It's like, aww.
I know, poor guy.
But it's also a good metaphor for a lot of people who maybe have been religious their whole life and have seen things, experienced things that really make them question it. But it's like we still respect him. He still respects his faith, and even Laura does. But he's maybe exploring what is life without that, or pivot, just a little bit different. Like he's not saying I denounce my beliefs or anything. It's just one of those like I'm trying to explore it, and I think that's kind of great that they showed that as well, because there are plenty of people that wrestle with what they've grown up to believe is true, and it's like, well, it's okay to question that as well.
Right. It's okay to question it. And if you are a firm believer, whatever you believe in, being challenged isn't the same thing as being threatened by. And so you can have a stimulus and say, no, I'm going to double down on what I believe in, and then that's okay.
Yeah, so I'm really kind of excited to watch it. Their road trip is really interesting in parallel because she already did a road trip with our leprechaun.
Oh.
So it's like, oh, this will be interesting. Exactly. I'd be like, ugh. But again, we were kind of curious about like how much will she play life safe now that she has seen what the other side is. Though I feel she kind of was lying to him. And the other thing too, which I mean, it's her experience, but us, the viewers, know there are other options after you die. And like, she doesn't say that to him, but I kind of hope he goes like, well, that was what happened when you died. Because it's like, I like how this show that whatever your belief in truly, not even what you just practice, but what you really believe in is what's for you on the other side.
Yeah, I wonder if purgatory will look different for everyone. Like it's a matter of perception. That's something that was rolling through my brain. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head for sure.
Yeah, I'd be really curious if, those people, that's what they think of, so that's what they go for. And then if you don't think of it that way, that's a good question. Leave comments down below your thoughts on that, because it is definitely like, I don't know, it's a really good discussion. It's very deep. This show is like, I agree. It is flippant in the sense that it just throws out extremely deep conversations that with most people, you can't just bring that up and be like, so where do you think we go when we die? Yeah. And you are not practicing your faith. Has your faith gone? Like, it's just one of those, like, you would have to tread lightly on most of these things.
And it comes in such a unique layer. You almost have to preface it with like, hey, do you watch American Gods? Okay, great. Now let's talk about it.
Yes. There's been a couple people I'm like, have you watched American Gods? You might like this. It really has good questions about like religion and your beliefs and things. Yeah. Okay, cool. Enjoy. We'll talk later.
Yeah.
Then our other interesting characters of what's going on. We kind of mentioned, but real quick. Yeah, Tech Boy going back to I wrote down essentially like he was going back to his origin, or like it's a safe space for him. I thought that was really interesting that he kept it. I feel like it's a comfort space because that's maybe is his origin of where he started. I don't know exactly what it really means, but how did you interpret that?
Yeah, it wasn't clear, and I actually had to rewind a couple of times to get it fully in, because if what happened in the beginning was true, I wouldn't want to see those mechanical things in my life. I would have put them in a box. I would have cast them off into the water. But then, like, it's something so traumatic, almost like a distant memory. It may be like a memento, like to refocus or don't let it happen again or what have you. So I totally understand that as well. I'm not sure what that means. Hopefully it pays off like quicker rather than later, because it's not really strong enough to be its own mystery. But it does seem that he is regressing, downgrading even.
Ooh, it's a downgrade, not an upgrade. Yes. Then we have our other exciting bit of this episode. First Wednesday in Demeter of like he's in the hospital with her. So do you feel this was full on a grifter scheme that he was playing crazy to get into the hospital?
I'm like this. I'm like sighing heavily for those of you who can't see me. You know what? It does feel that way. He seems pretty much a sound mind, but it makes last week feel so much more cheap. Like, cause I was ready to go on this giant like escapade to find out with the new band what that meant. So kind of cast aside. I know it has nothing to do with this, but the TV show Entourage is like that. It'll give you this big mystery cliffhanger and go back to our
that was a good show.
Yeah, it was, but so frustrating. But yeah, I totally feel it's a grifter thing for Wednesday because it makes sense. He wants to get the quote unquote love of his life out of that mental hospital. So.
Yeah, I feel it's a mix between the two. I do think he was injured to an extent. We also don't really know how God's bodies work with injury / how much people believe in them. Like, can they get shot and be like, I'm fine if there's something that's believed in heavily? Or since he's a little more medium, it's more like you just have like 50 plus armor, or I don't know, something like he's like a little bit there, but not like if you cut his arm off, it's not going to grow back. But versus somebody who'd be like a different belief that would be back quick. So I do think there was some injury there, but I do think he's definitely playing the long game of a con, because I like when he's in bed and she goes away and he's like, beep, opens his eyes like, oh. I like that she cares. I want him to actually really care about her. But based on what Cordelia was saying, he does, because she's like, wow, he was actually really nervous. So that makes me go, okay. Because I want him to care about Demeter. So I really hope so. I do.
Yeah. Well, that scene to me cut through a lot of the questions I had about Cordelia and her disappearing. So the fact that when Wednesday went down last episode and she was frantically calling Shadow, and now outside that interaction where Shadow is ready to be like, "Fix it yourself, oh man, I got things to do." Waka 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 waka. Cordelia be like, "No, I think your dad really has something there. Maybe he wants some money as a bonus, but I think he does care about her, and it's just enough that." Do all of the ways this show tries to mess with your mind, I felt the most legitimately like honest from Cordelia. So I liked her for that. She was the compass, she was the totem in Inception, if you will, and Shadow and her play off so well to each other.
Yes. Now my question for you then too: how much do you think she believes what really is going on? Like, how much do you think she believes he is a god versus he's just saying that and she's like, yeah, sure.
I want to say that there's something more. Like I feel like people who are magnetic have an aura about them, and I do think that may get misinterpreted. So by him saying I'm a god, she may write it off as he's really sure of himself, and I feel his energy, as opposed to him being like, oh, he's the son of, or whatever.
Yeah, I don't think she fully believes what's really going on, but I don't think she's dumb or naive. I just think she just hasn't seen enough. She's a skeptic in the sense of, I think she would need to see more to really be like, oh shit, this is legit. He is what he's saying is true. So I think right now she's a bit more like playing the field of like, all right, this is the reality I've seen. This is what I know to be real.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I really do hope that back to Shadow. Oh, Shadow and Demeter. How much did you like her looking up and down like, this is your son?
Yeah. I was like,
oh, you did good.
Okay, Demeter, get yours.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting the Shadow has hair, so he took off his hat. I was like, oh, yeah.
Well, you know what's funny on that? This is definitely like edits. When he first took it off, I was like, okay, cool, nice and shaggy. And then it looked nice, like nice messy. Then when they did a different shot, it was like bloop and sticking up all weird. I'm like, all right, it did not look that dorky 2 seconds ago.
You're like, take me out of this episode. No, but the thing about Demeter is, I can imagine on the end of Heartbreak, when someone breaks your heart, they leave, you kind of wish the worst, but you wish they're okay, and the same thing. And then not only do you see Wednesday come in looking as dashing as ever, despite the fact you know him, he's able to have his own life. So I won't say that's a FOMO thing. She's like, I don't want a shadow of my own. But there's a time where Wednesday went out there and lived his life outside, even though the god influence has been diminishing for Norse gods. Maybe that might be the spark of Demeter wanting to leave on her own accord.
2 things on that. One, what did you think of, and I really enjoyed her description, that he's like a bottle of champagne opening. It's the excitement, the bubbles, and then just kind of fades.
Yeah, that's why everyone can't stand the guy.
All right. This is one that I'm like, okay, this could totally be reading into it, but it really leaves it open. I also half wondered that there's a couple layers to her looking at Shadow, that he's not white, that he's brown. Sure. And she wasn't like shocked in the sense that like she's anti-black or anything like that. It was just more like, oh, Wednesday, you were with like somebody I wouldn't expect. And I kind of wonder if in a good way for her that shows that he's changed, that he is more open-minded. That's like weird and lame as that all sounds. But like it just had this like, oh, that's not what I would have expected. Does this reflect that your personality and who you go after has changed, that you are, whatever? I
saw parts of that because going into it, Wednesday is a Norse god. So just by nature of the draw of the population, the odds of being around people of color are small. Not to say America's not that way at all. So he wouldn't be remiss if his son were white. And so that first look up and down, I guess maybe I'm trained in looking at that. I was like, choose your words carefully.
Yes. I was like, are you checking him out? Well, I felt like it's both. Like, one, impressed because it's like you have a very good looking son. Yeah. And also like, oh, he's brown. That's not what I would have expected.
Right.
Like, this is your child?
It's a bundle of that. And I go back to season 2, how it took Wednesday so long to say he had a child. And it was very kind of like factual. The fact that he was warm and saying, this is my boy, this is my son, made me tip the scales into a good thing. But you're right. Yeah. As a person of color watching the show, I'm always like,
Yeah, like
We're still in America, right? Yeah, I got it.
yeah, so I feel it's a little mix of that, but I like that this is a good example of where it is extremely vague that you could interpret that different ways, and I feel that's kind of on purpose because I feel Shadow too of him like, is this okay? Like, what's up? You know, because it's him wondering what's going on, and we don't really know. Because I'm glad that she didn't say anything weird or it's Wednesday. But like you said, that's a really good point that like before he had never been like, this is my son. And now he's like, yeah, this one's mine. Like he's proud. So it's like, aw. So let's see. Yeah. So they have also, if you want to say more about, oh yeah. So we had the Cordelia and Shadow at the car. Was there anything more on that moment that you were saying? Just more that she's just, I do feel she's honest. Like I don't feel, though technically our next scene, honesty is a little different. She's a neutral lawful kind of, you know, if it's one of those, it depends where it is. Yeah. But she doesn't seem like someone who's going to lie to you unless like you're a bad person.
Well, again, this may be the long con of it all, but I have confidence in Cordelia, and that helped me out with. I'm sure we'll talk about the next scene because they could, if it had been anyone else, I would be worried about a double cross. But in that 37, I wasn't because of Cordelia had that moment with Shadow.
I thought that end sequence of that, how it was filmed different, how it was edited different, and that heist, I'm like, can we have this movie? It felt so cinematic and so fun and exciting. I was like, oh, this feels like I'm watching a movie.
Very cool detour. It reminded me of there's a graphic novel called Thief of Thieves over there on Skybound. Check it out. Very cutscene, very hard edges. You know, like it just has a throwback to a movie you don't see anymore. And that Australian accent, I had to go look up to see if Ricky Riddle was Australian. He's British, but I had to go look it up. I was like, is he Australian? That was pretty spot on. Yeah, it was fun. I'll watch that back when the season's over for sure.
Yeah, that was such a good sequence. They did it so well. And that guy, which we learn he is, him scamming these old people is not cool. So I liked him getting his comeuppance. Like, all right, really? Is he like screwing them over? It's like, yes. And it's like, you have this money in the Cayman Islands. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to know what else is on that laptop.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cat pictures.
But well, we hope only that. Yeah. But yeah, it's such an exciting way to, and I like that the episode changed it up because it really felt like a different tone and vibe and like editing. Like you said, it's not as common now, and so it felt really like fresh in this world.
Yeah, to be a little lightly critical with this series, that sometimes they kind of go to the mind f a bit too often on the show. Sometimes the mind fuck, the crazy scenes and thing. Like sometimes it's not even earned. You're like, okay, I'm on the ride, cool. But it's cool to see something that to be like an actual show within a show, a diversion, a treat for the fans, and it makes sense in this world, and it made sense that it was as methodical as the plan was.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was so funny, such a plan of like a number 37, and I'm like, am I supposed to know what this is?
Yeah, I'm not pausing it.
I'm like, what? Huh? Okay. But I just loved it. It felt so fun, and yeah, just fun. I think is a good example, a good word for it. Of just like I was smiling, like this is so cool, and she did great, and I'm like, oh, the power of distracting beautiful lady. Of like, ooh, who's that girl?
It works.
It does, and she does a good job of like, oh yeah, hi, what's up, and yep.
Yeah, and I love the fact where like guys like use my phone. He goes, cool. I'm like, that would never happen in real life. I'm like, why are you giving me your phone?
Well, you could do it to make a call, but he had a good excuse, and I think in the heat of it, you would just be like, yeah, sure, of like, I'm flying back home. This is essentially a burner phone. You can just have it, but agree. I wouldn't be surprised if someone's like, here, you can use my phone for a call. But if someone was handing me their phone, it would be like, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with the phone? Like, too much on the phone to be like, here, you can have it. Be like,
that's way too kind of you.
Yeah, I'd be like, okay, what's wrong with it? How'd you bug it or lace it with something that I'll put up to my ear?
I can't believe you're as cynical as I am.
Wait, say it again?
I can't believe you're as cynical as I am.
Right, well, actually, I was going to say, side note on that, if anybody else is on TikTok, So I kind of did it just now, but Flobo, make a gesture like you're going to call someone.
Like this?
Yeah. So it's on TikTok. I saw it was like parents doing with their kids. They're like, make a gesture, and they're asking different people of ages. And the younger people are doing this.
Oh.
And it's this. And then the other one is also make a gesture like you're taking a picture.
Oh, this is going to be bad.
Yeah. So it was like this, like with the years of the people, and the younger people did this.
Wow.
And I'm like, no!
I'm cynical
But if
and
they've
old.
never done one like this, okay, it makes sense. But I'm just like,
yeah. Because my mom was doing phone calls like this back in the day. Oh.
Right? Well, here's the other thing that's weird. I'll use my phone example. Like, I get this, but like, wide angle shots, come on, people. Horizontal photo as well.
Yeah. Yeah,
but see, they're
kids.
for the gram, their stories, so they need it. Yeah.
Just wow. You proved that I'm old again.
Right? You're just like, Leave comments down below your thoughts on those of, but I'm defining it too. I got my side part. That's the other weird argument.
Yeah,
Part
I
your
use
hair
beard oil.
however
Cool.
you want.
You're as old as you want to be.
That too. Age is just a number. But speaking of people coming back, and then we think trends are dead, people are dead, we get Laura showing up where Shadow has gone back to Lakeside, and she's like, hey there. And I was like, oh, I hope it's going to be okay. I guess I want to know what she wants from him. Does she want closure so she can move on and apologize for how bad of a person she was to him? Or does she want to get back together with him? What do you think?
She's not there for the pasties, I can tell you that. Yeah, I think it's pretty much clear she's in love with Sweeney, even if she doesn't want to admit it. But like she said in her movie room purgatory, I think it's kind of her redemption thing of being like, I was bad to you. It's easy for me to say I'm an F up, but actually maybe it's something I could have done differently to spare your feelings instead of sparing you along. Kind of thing.
Yeah, so we'll see. I want her not to hurt him again, but I also want closure for her. I feel like she can't really move on yet. Clearly, she went to purgatory, not ready to move on yet. So I want her to, whatever it is, get wrapped up so she can feel better to move on with her life now that she has her life back. So it's like, we'll see. Was there anything else in the episode we didn't get to that stood out to you?
Everything else is pretty much covered, but again, that passive reveal was like, who could it be? I was expecting somebody completely different or scary.
Oh, you didn't think it'd be Laura?
I mean, I didn't think she would make it there in time. I thought she'd be. I thought she'd be on the road trip of the episode. But yeah, having her at the end was like, oh snap, Shadow, now what?
And she knew where he was. I mean, she asked where Wednesday is, but I was like, did she know how to find Shadow?
She's probably just hungry. I was like,
that too.
Yeah.
Or it's the fates. We've also learned weird shit happens on this show. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be, and like worlds collide. So it's like, I guess we'll see.
I have a question. Do you think the car falling through the lake will actually make it on air, or is that kind of like just done and dusted? Is that like?
I hope we come back to that because that felt interesting of a magic something. And to have a whole scene of him picking the date and for us to not see it again. Same thing with our girl missing, the peacock in the woods. I hope it's just like, here, we're going to lay out all the puzzle pieces and we'll pull them all together at the end. Because, yeah, it felt like too much time for something that doesn't pay off.
Yeah, and the Unmentionable Raider also.
The what?
The Unmentionables Raider, the guy.
Yeah, I want to know what's more going on. I do love the small town gossip vibe of like, so what's going on? Well,
yeah.
She has the like, looks around. All right, well, let me tell you. And ladies unmentionables. I'm like, come on, it's underwear, calm down. But I hope there's something more to it because it feels too weird to keep bringing it up for it to be nothing. You know,
Yeah,
it's like,
absolutely.
We'll sit there. If there is nothing, we'll just sit there and be like, WTF. Like,
right.
Yeah.
There you go. American Gods.
Be like, okay, fine, whatever. But we'll see. Let us know your thoughts on all the things we cover. Comment down below because it's definitely a lot that goes on in this show and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it as well. Also, make sure to click that thumbs up button, subscribe. I'm thinking it's one of these ways up there or whatever to be up to date on more of these. And we'll get to boom. All right, and Flobo, where can people find you online?
You can follow me on social media at Flobo Boyce. And if you want to see me talk about random things about Star Trek or wrestling or just have a late night fun on time, youtube.com/Flobo Boyce. All my videos are there, just hanging out.
Wrestling. Okay.
Wrestling.
I like it. Yes. And then you all can find me. Wait, there we go. Yep. It's like a weird. Anyway. Yes. Find me online at Kari D Lane, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter as well. Cover anime, and it's on here on YouTube. There'll be Sword Art Online. We just finished that. I'm sad it's over. At least for now, we hope. Go check out those episodes. A whole bunch of voice actors on my Instagram. Having interviews with people as well as just random fun content across the board, and hopefully informational as well on sometimes at least. Or cool motivational quotes. I try to find those too. But not the super cheesy ones. I try to find other weird ones that people don't use that often. But side note. Well, like Valentine's Day, I found one. It was like a question. I think it was love does not dominate, it cultivates. And I was like, I like that. And I don't feel that's one that's like plastered everywhere. So it was nice of like, okay, I like finding quotes that aren't like the
alternative motivation. I like
super cookie cutter. I don't know what this is a cookie. Actually, we should ask kids like, what are scissors?
What are scissors?
I'm gonna cut you out. I don't know.
Cut it
anyway. Well, thank you so much for watching, and make sure to tune in for next week. Until then, stay safe, and we'll see you later. Bye.